10 o'clock.
Yep.
I forgot to get it. Okay, welcome everybody. Call this meeting to order. Welcome to the Waterways Committee meeting, Wednesday, 4th of December 2024. We'll start off with a Karakia Timatanga, which is on the wall on the left up there. It's not the lead.
Maiti pai manga, rara kiti pai. Maiti awatonga, rara kiti awaraki. Tēnā iti hapori, awhi ai taratai. Whānau, haringai, homiai, ringai, tāia.
Thank you. Apologies, I don't think we've got any apologies.
This, we want to record Michael as an apology. Want to record that?
It's part of a new committee.
Yeah.
Any conflicts of interest and declarations on today's agenda? Nobody's got any conflicts. We've got nobody in public. So we'll move on to the confirmation of the minutes of the last meeting, 14th of August, which a copy has all been circulated. Anybody got any questions or discussion on anything that is?
I do, Brian. Yep. Could I just so under noted bullet point 3, the discussion about the Wainawa processed water project that's operational. We had a recommendation to go to the council that when the Wainawa processed water project is operational, that in times of low flow water race users using water for stock are prioritised over industrial users of water race water. I'm just wondering where that went with the council.
If I may share, so the Wainawa processed water project is not operational yet, but we haven't taken that as a decision to council. I think it has been noted here, but yeah, we haven't taken it as a recommendation to council yet.
So when do you think that might be? How far away is it from being operational?
Operational, probably not another 7 months.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Righto. It's just that that's what the water race is all about, is getting the water to the stock. So we just want to make sure that that prioritisation is actually happens down the track when you are able to look at it. Thank you.
Agree with that, John? Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Sorry, Neil.
in the financial report under the recommendation 1, what was the outcome of that recommendation regarding the overheads?
Oh, okay. Yeah. Oh, yeah. We informally as a discussion point, Jeff, did you want to?
Yeah, so there was some question as to whether there was some the whole of the committee wanted that decision to go up to council, and so I was asked to go away and look at the issue, particularly with regards backdating, and I've come back with a suggestion for the committee to consider, and I'm happy to pick that up now or happy to pick that up later, but if you want me to cover it, I'm more than happy to.
Doesn't worry me. Lawrence.
Just conscious that there are potentially some new members, whether or not they need a bit more background. Introduction and so background before you launch into a discussion, or
That recommendation we put on last time was rescinded.
Yeah. So I guess what I was, do you want me to carry on? So I guess what I was proposing to do was a recommendation that was changed just regarding the backdating of overhead charges, or request to unwind some of the backdating of the overhead charges that was made to council, and then it was rescinded. I guess what I was attempting to do was look at the overall picture and say, how can we move forward with this. We've solved the problem. We fixed it in the new LTP. We've got something of a hangover. And my suggestion to Brian was, well, perhaps council could offer to employ an apprentice for Pikey and not charge that cost on to the water race for a period of time. And we could carry that cost as part of our commitment to the water race and say, hey, look, we got things wrong, but also we want to move forward. And I'd be happy to recommend that through to council and bear that as part of council's budget. On the proviso, the water race committee finds me the person, because I've tried this twice before and it hasn't worked. And so if you can find the person, I'm happy to employ them.
Would we, though the first thing, like I thought, where we sort of got to too was that maybe myself and John Booth would get for something and go through what you've suggested and work out how much money is involved, and then look at an effective way of, helpful way of getting it back was what you're suggesting, Jeff. So should we still do that now in the new year? Because I mean, my apologies for not getting it done before this meeting, but I got a bit busy with stuff and didn't do it. So I talked to John a couple of weeks about it, but I just couldn't quite get there. So if we were to do that, would that be all right?
Well,
And
I think my suggestion was let's not go back and reopen history, because sometimes past is best left in the past. We made a mistake, we fixed it, moved on. I'm trying to come up with a solution that doesn't involve me reopening the past. So that was all I was offering, and as an idea to the committee, we could do something along those lines.
I would support that idea, but I would like the whole water race committee to be involved in those discussions rather than just a couple of members of it.
it was just a matter of going back through and,
Yeah,
and identifying the amount of money, because you've got to know that as a base point.
but I would like to be involved in those discussions as well.
Oh, that's fine. Well, it was only to get the numbers, but no, it was only for us to get numbers and come back to you. It wasn't to make a decision. It was just to get the numbers, then come back and say, well, these are the numbers. And what we're suggesting, it was like Jeff's suggestion, is then if that was the case, then what is that going to cost for how long? So you'd have a basis to work with.
Yeah, but I think we're a little bit like, I mean, the numbers are kind of almost irrelevant now because a mistake was identified. It's been rectified. So going forward, and when I say a mistake, we don't know even if it was a mistake, because we can't find what the formula was that was used to create the initial invoice, but it wasn't picked up by this committee or by anybody else. What Jeff's suggesting, I mean, there's not going to be a cash payout or a dollar for dollar compensation or anything like that. What we're trying to do, or what Jeff's suggesting, is that we know that the best thing for the water race going forward is to have a succession plan for Pikey. And if that can be used and funded as a quid pro quo against the previous overheads, we just want to draw a line under it and put something in place that's going to future-proof the water race and the water race committee, and just move forward and not keep trying to fix stuff from the history.
I'm absolutely in agreement with doing that.
Yeah.
But you still got to know where your base is, where you start from. And it's only just no. And then from Jeff's point of view, he says, well, this is the mistake, because it went on for like 4 years and got bigger and worse. So once we know the number, then we can say, well, if we employ, like Jeff's suggesting, well, therefore, that man could be employed for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, whatever it is. But you've got to have a basis to start with. And that's that's simple accounting. And then work out, we don't know what the cost of a 2 ICL apprentice to Pikey is. We'd have to work out that and then put that against the numbers and then come up and say, well, is that palatable for us all?
I think you're suggesting, are you not, Jeff, that the staff member would be employed by council, and though potentially as the person is trained up and stays as long as Pikey, then that's not reflected back to the water. So, I mean, it's a good deal for the Water Race Committee because potentially you could get another 150 years like Pikey.
There's poor old Pikey sitting there thinking he's going to be gotten rid of shortly.
There's been plenty of CEOs who have tried that.
And this could be one of those moments.
Okay.
I actually didn't think anything was off the table at this point. I thought that was going to be a discussion for council to make.
Yes.
Not saying here that there's not going to be a cash payout, there's not going to be this, there's not going to be that, because we haven't discussed that around the council.
Have we got any idea what sort of money you're talking about? I'm new, I've just asked the question.
I've got a pretty good idea, but I didn't quite tabulate it. Jeff will do the same calculation. But I think that's my point. You got to know what sort of money. And then I think Jeff's option that's a very good one in my view. But let's have a look. We'll calculate the money. And then, because Jeff, when the mistake was pointed out, and the issue is, the mistake was pointed out, I went to Jeff looked through, he said, you're bang on the money. He said, this is wrong. Going back, Jeff had a go going back, it's just a balls up from previous administration. So it's no good worrying about that. But the point is that where the wonky bit probably is, I don't know how the council was worked, but we couldn't get when Jeff did the matrix for the new long-term plan, another 3 years had gone by, and every year there was an increasing deficit against the water race system. So we've all been on side in recognising a mistake. Jeff has been absolutely proactive in saying there's a mistake, and we've got to work through it, work it out. So, but I think
I could use slightly different language. There wasn't a mistake. There was something that I couldn't validate that had an allocation model. And so because I couldn't find the old validation model that says this is why this gets 10% and that gets 20%, and we built a new one. And so I went to council and said, here's the principles I want to build a new allocation model on. And those were obviously different principles to the previous allocation model, and we ended up with a different number. I'm not sure I would call that a mistake. I'd say that's a change in the principles that we use to derive the allocation. Now, going back 3 years and attempting to recast history is challenging, to say the least. And we did, with our LTP, draw a line under it and say we've created a new allocation model. We shared the principles that we did the allocation on with council, made them transparent and public, came up with a new model, and we've adopted the new model. Now, I'm saying, like, there wasn't a mistake. I'm saying I don't know how it was calculated, but clearly there is a grievance with the Water Race Committee, and so I'm coming up with a suggestion on how to deal with that grievance.
Yes.
But my suggestion doesn't involve going back and recalculating history.
Yeah.
That's where John and I are different. I'm not suggesting I go and reopen the past.
Jeff, Brian, through Brian, Jeff, I really like your suggestion. And I think it addresses two problems that we've had. One sort of in the past with the charging, but also that one that for years has been talked about, how we get an apprentice or someone to take over Pikey's job when he retires.
I think when he retires, we'll be digging something clear.
John, you guys obviously don't listen. I retired 48 years ago when I started.
Oh, they'll be calling you lazy. But I just think I think this is a grand opportunity for us to move forward and address this problem of who's going to look after our water races as we go forward, because it's critical. You know, we've got a guy who's got institutional knowledge going back 40, 50 years. And I think it's really urgent that we now get someone in that position to learn all about it, because we all sit here as water race elected members beating on about how important that water is to get it to the end of the water race system and all that. That's one of the biggest parts of his job, is making sure we maintain that flow through. We need someone else to know all the tricks of the trade, don't we, Pikey? And I've seen it in all my time. You know, someone who's a sixth generation on the land that's had that water race through it, the Taratahi water race. So, you know, in the past I thought, oh, all this money, but I think we just need to move on because we're just going to go round and round in circles. It's a great option. Maybe we need Jeff to put some, you know, what it costs per annum to employ this person. So we go forward in our minds, yep, it's coming back in that way to us. And I think it's a really good suggestion. Thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, John. So, Neil?
Yeah, I agree with the suggestion. I think it's an excellent one. But I just like to get back to my point. You know, we had this resolution, a recommendation to go to council, and then I'm told now that it's been rescinded or whatever. And what authority was that done, or who did that?
The person that moved it rescinded it.
Like, can you do that at a meeting without any
Yeah, we sent,
consultation?
we sent an email out to rescind it.
Yeah.
Everyone got an email to vote.
I got that. Yeah.
So we did.
Okay.
That's quite within.
So from here, I take it that we need to agree an action that Jeff takes away. Oh, sorry, Ron.
Just a point of order. I'm just a little bit concerned. The question Neil raised, and I think without dragging standing orders out, I'm not quite sure any council resolution has ever been overturned by an email. And so maybe you might want to formalise the withdrawal of that motion now for the record.
It makes sense.
And that way you can say at the meeting at this date, at this time, the motion was withdrawn or was rescinded, and whether John wants to move that motion to be seconded by someone. I think that's just a way of tidying this up because procedurally I don't think it is correct, actually, and I don't want to be a pain.
I go there, but
Yeah, just
it's got to be.
lock it down. Oh, yeah. So just at a point in time researching, you might want to press pause and have a think at which stage of this proceeding you want to inject it. But yeah, I think insurance.
So is that time to do that now, is it?
Yes, I would have thought so.
Yeah,
Well, I'll move then that the motion be rescinded.
I'll second that. I'll move it, whichever.
okay, so we've got a motion on the floor from Neil Wadham moving and John McFadden signaling that we rescind the original motion. I've got the date in front of me.
On the 14th of August at 1 p.m.
Sorry,
2024.
the original motion be rescinded and
6.31.
we, oh yes, I see. Yep. So, so I'll put that motion, sorry.
Yep.
Dribbling. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you. So that puts that to bed. So now, I understand that from an action from this, we will come up with some recommendation.
Would the committee like to recommend to council?
So, yeah,
You know, what may be appropriate?
Would the committee consider recommending that the CE further develop his suggestion into a written paper that be presented to the committee for consideration?
I can do that.
Yep.
So if the committee would like to move
so
that,
that's an action.
I'm trying to be happy, yeah.
Yep.
And helpful. And happy.
So we want to move and second that.
Well, I'm happy to move. Second, whatever.
Yep,
John and
but
John.
the only, for how many years?
All those in favour? All those in favour?
Aye.
Against, carried.
Chairman,
Thank you.
something we might need to do is look at the old standing bylaws. The position of my replacement is a 5-year training course. Had to have worked on the system for 5 years before they have the right to apply for the job. So you might have to make some changes to that. Because 5 years might be longer than I've got.
So we're gonna have, the CE is gonna prepare
Yeah.
report for a paper for this committee to consider. It's details that will
Yep.
be considered at a later stage.
I just note that it was Johannes's suggestion.
Yeah.
It wasn't the CE's. I want to take credit for my staff's work. Yes.
Okay, so we're still on matters arising from the confirmation of the last minutes. So is there any other discussion on the minutes? If not, I will move that they are correct, accurate and correct record. Can I have a second of it, please? Neil Wadham seconded. All those in favour?
That's a good idea.
Against? Carried. Right. The first thing that we'll shuffle the reports around a bit. So the first report I got was the late one that was just tabled, naught results of the water race election results. So basically there's no matters of significance in that. You've all got the results, and at the last meeting I thanked Jill and David for the work that they have done, or I thanked all the committee for the work that they have done. So
Do you want someone to move that they be received?
yes, I just need somebody to Ron.
Thank you.
Seconded Steve, that the recommendation receives the results of the water race elections 2024 moved by Ron, seconded by Steve. Courtney, all those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Yeah, so with that, that's my next note I've got. So my next note I got down, welcome to the new committee members, Grant, recycled, well done, Grant, and John Boo, ex-co-opted, and now on the committee. So, and the re-elected members, John McFadgen, Neil Wadham, all congratulations, and thanks. Look forward to another 3 years of important discussions.
Congratulations.
So the next, we're going to juggle a little bit more. So the next thing, we've got to appoint a deputy chair. So that's item 6.1 in the reports. And the deputy chair is a member of the elected members, community member group. And so we need to, I need to call for nominations. Quite sure whether we all vote on this or is it just the water race committee? Elected members. The elected. The full staff, the full committee.
No, I thought it was just the water race.
The water race.
Just the water race. So if your name's John, Grant or Neil, you either nominate or vote.
Yeah. Okay, so we call for nominations for
I nominate John Booth.
Booth. Yep, I'll second that. Moved and seconded.
It's easy, wasn't it?
Is there any other nominations?
This is where John Booth nominates someone else.
I'm going on holiday. I don't want to be here too long.
No other nominations. I congratulate John Booth on becoming deputy chair. Good.
Good behave.
Got a victory speech there, or you're right?
No, just that I promise to behave.
Oh, okay, cool. Tyra's got a busy afternoon, so she would like to present her financial report, 6.5. So we'll zap through to that.
Afternoon, everybody. sorry that the attachment wasn't actually attached, but nobody had noticed, so so it can't be that bad. We do summarise, we've got a key variance report and the discussions, etc., for the financial report. So I'm presuming you have all read those. They just consolidate what we have in our normal financial report. But if you'd like a moment to read the attachment, that paper, that's fine. Otherwise, I'll take the report as read. Did anybody have any questions?
Yeah. I noticed that, or a couple of things. I see the overheads come down in line with what the changes Jeff made, so that's good. And I noticed that the total income, full budget was 604,000, and the year before was 822. What's that?
And that will be because the overhead allocation has dropped, so
That is income.
income will reduce, so the water race charges for users would have dropped as a result.
So that, I thought they were an expenditure, Jeff. The
Overheads are an expenditure.
Yeah,
So the whole plan is to end up with a zero budget.
Yeah.
So if we reduce the expenditure by reducing the overheads, we need less income from water race users. So we charge less to water race users.
So maybe if it helps, obviously with a council budget, there's no intention to generate revenue or profit. So you only cover, you limit your revenue to cover expense. So there shouldn't all in it ever be balance.
I didn't realise it.
Same with the whole rating.
Yeah.
Okay. The other thing was I noticed that that maintenance on the water races was 388,000 23-24 and gone down to 246. How does that work?
So the one is
The year before was 251. So last year must have been a year. Well, it was because we were trying to catch up with deferred maintenance.
so
Was that?
So if I can maybe just speak to that. So we've got the budget, the difference in budget is around that 200. It should be around the 246. That's the budget for the year. The actual expenditure for last year was 380. So we overspent on the budget because of the environmental effects of that. So we dealt with the effects of the weather events and those kind of things. There was also the significant wheat growth, those kind of things that made it overspent. But we don't then automatically bump up the budget to fit the overspend, keep it in line with the level of service that we're aiming to deliver.
Okay. And the other question is, we're spending money on the resource consent. What's that going to cost? No, but
It's not actually the resource consent, that's the payment that we have to pay Greater Wellington Regional Council for the resource consent that we've got for the water race.
that's the main
Yeah.
payment to them. Sorry, yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It's a yearly different charge.
Yeah.
So
really.
That's what we're paying them every year. Well, it goes in here. So we paid them like 68,000, 35,000, 40,000.
Yeah.
So that's all to do with the consent.
That's the ability for us to take the water from Wainawa and the Monkey.
So that's operating the consent and giving effect to the conditions of consent. So that's not applying for a new consent. It is just operating under the existing one.
Everybody that has a irrigation consent has exactly not those figures, but we all have that same monitoring.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So where's the cost of the consent, the resource consent?
It's CapEx.
Yeah.
and forgive me if I'm putting words into Lawrence's mouth, but the consent is progressing at a glacial pace. And we're relatively happy with that because we fear if we push too hard, they will come down with consent conditions that are much more stringent than if we proceed at this pace. So we are operating under the previous consent, which we're quite happy with, and we're in no rush to have new consent conditions which are harsher.
Yeah,
A fair assessment.
Yeah, and can speak to it in terms of that, but for instance, one of the delays is that they're asking us to provide more information around the effect on the Teratahi, but Masterton are already doing a whole lot of work for their water take for the water supply. And I don't want to repeat a whole lot of ecological surveys in the same catchment. So I'm delaying going back to them because they've got a draft report which isn't ready for regional council's consumption yet. So yeah, it's a bit of back and forth.
Working through the process, it is progressing, but
If I may add, for you, Chair, we have a standing report at the Projects and Policy Committee where we report on all of council consents, which includes the water rights consent. So that's the frequency of the Policy and Projects Committee is more regular than this meeting. So if the Water Rights Committee are interested in an update on that, on the water rights consent progress, then you can see it in those reports as well.
Okay, John?
Just a quick one. Has there been any potential changes, Lawrence, with the consent, with the change of government and some new legislation that's been coming out around waterways, all that sort of thing?
Because we're going underneath the natural resources plan, any changes in terms of the government hasn't been reflected in that. So we can't, well, potentially there's benefit in terms of taking a bit longer that we might be captured in those changes.
Okay.
But it's an unknown in terms of, because it might go the other way and be worse off. So it's sometimes better the devil you know than
no, that's fine. I was just sort of something was mulling over and I wondered if there was some
our areas management. Yeah, so the hierarchy of needs.
Hierarchy of needs in terms of that will have changed.
It hasn't changed yet.
No,
there's a signal that has come out that said they're proposing to change the hierarchy of needs, but I don't believe they've changed the GPS, which actually has changed. All they've said is they wish to change it, I thought. So,
but that also, whether that gets down to the consenting officer you're dealing with as well.
There are some regional councils who are kind of doing their own thing anyway, aren't they?
Yeah.
It's actually become a horrendous thing. I'm going through it in the golf club and the conditions that they're putting on us. And we've had meetings with Butterick and he is working on changes, but well, that's going to happen. But unreasonable club like that and a small council like this, it's just bloody horrendous. Bloody crazy stuff.
Yeah. But at some point though, you've got to say no.
Yeah.
You can't keep giving in to them. And this is the issue. It's been ongoing and exacerbating on its own self, is that people keep giving in to them, compromising. But regional council, like they're there to do a job, and their job is specific around environment, hunting trees like they used to and all that sort of thing. But when they've got into all this other stuff and they've become the heavyweight and then they're dictating, but at some point you've got to say no. And then like in the consent process, like what Lawrence, they'll come back with some conditions. But if we don't like those conditions, then it's up to us to say no. No, they're not workable, so we're not going to do it.
I think Jeff made a really good point earlier that it's glacial, but I think that's, in our paved district to quietly go along and we'll get there.
Yeah. If I could just also comment, I think the previous, what we're operating underneath that process took 10 years. So
And then you only got a consent for 10 years, so. you
Yes.
can Start on the next one, which to me is.
Nonsense of it.
Eh?
So you could argue that ultimately you got 20 years operation out of the consent.
We've gone for a 20-year consent.
Okay, so let's get back on to financial rather than consents at the moment because they're coming up. Well, is there any more questions on Kyra's financial report? There's no more discussion or questions on ask somebody to move the adoption of Kyra's financial report. I'll move it. I'll move it. Seconder. Thanks, Steve. Go on. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against, carried. Thank you, Kyra. Okay. Six point two, review of water race committee terms of reference on page 12. Okay, so we have circulated the terms of reference to everybody. Has anybody got any discussion or questions on the terms of reference as they are here?
I thought they were very good. I thought it said everything that we need to do.
The only thing that I've picked up on, and I don't know whether we have to actually put it in our terms of reference, the frequency of meetings is quarterly or ad hoc. I don't know whether we need to actually put, or I suggested putting it or ad hoc on it.
As required.
Or as required if we feel that that is another requirement, or can we just call a meeting?
You can always call an extraordinary if you feel the need to.
An extra meeting?
You can always.
Anything that would allow you to call an extraordinary.
Okay. Just leave that out. Sorry. Everybody else, membership of the committee, 3 elected members, and obviously the mayor's ex officio. Anything I could see? Everybody happy with them?
Yeah.
We've got a couple of recommendations. One, I'll probably take them as read. 1 and 2. 1, we received the report, and 2, agrees no changes are required for the water race committee terms of reference. And number 4, notes any amendments to the water race committee reference will be referred to council for endorsement. Have a mover, please. Down here, Neil. And a seconder.
I'll second that one.
Thanks, Grant. Put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
It's carried. All right. Water race report on page 14, item 6.3. It's G, is it your report? Dolores?
Ask, has everybody met
Oh.
Jeet?
No.
Probably not, sorry.
Well, I can introduce, so my apologies. So Karan is our new consent and compliance officer. He has taken over from the previous consent and compliance officer and already making a fantastic difference to the community. That's just a joke. He's taken over from Lawrence. And Lawrence is still working with them until G finds his feet. But welcome G to the Water Race Committee.
Thank you.
My apologies, Jeep, for not introducing you earlier.
No, that's all right. That's all right.
Been around a while and I just took it for granted. Anyway, welcome and yes, if you could just present your report and speak to it. Thank you.
I just read. We just spoke about the principal renewals. And others are just the update to what's happening with the maintenance of waterways. It's nothing significant to be pointed out, unless you have any concerns with what I should hand out.
Thank you, Steve.
Thanks, Brian. Gee, I'm just under the overseers report.
Yeah.
I hear this probably you as well. Is there any way that we can advocate to regional council around their installation of fences and stuff, which is prohibiting the cleaning of our water races?
Well, we do.
Why are we allowing them to put fences in, or what can we do to stop them putting fences in, which are?
If I may speak to that, I think so. So we don't have the authority to enforce that on private land. However, we can take an action to take it up with Greater Wellington. In the past, we had those discussions. They were quite open to that, but I think then the message probably with staff turnover, the message didn't go through. So it's probably a task for Lawrence to take away and catch up with Greater Wellington again.
Councillor, correct me. We have had previous conversations and they do come on infrequent basis to get those fencings, but I'm wondering whether or not are we directing at the right people? Because ultimately the water races are owned by the landowners. So if they're making it more difficult to clean their water races and as the maintenance one, should we not potentially be going out to the water race users and saying, by the way, did you know we might be starting or saying that we might start charging you extra if it's going to cost us double the time to clear out your water race and maintain it because you haven't come to us for advice?
I thought we agreed that was going to happen.
Well, weren't the regional council insisting on a minimum distance from the edge of a waterway?
Yeah.
A minimum, which might be 2 metres, might be 5 metres. I don't know. I can't remember. But and that's where the problem lies. That goes back a number of years now that was brought in. So maybe it's some clarification needed from regional council as to what their current regulations are.
And I think that's one of the things that has changed.
Is that, yeah,
with the new government.
is it? Yeah.
Haven't they said in the past that they're unsure of the regulations and they couldn't give advice on the distance or whatever?
I think maybe, again, through you, Chair, if it is the wish of the committee, then we could possibly look into whether we can change the charging of water race for water race users, so that in the event that there's a water race that's different to the norm, that we do have the ability to have an adjustment into the way that we charge that. And so we can do some work on that.
But we'll also have the conversation with the regional council.
Yeah, it's just I don't know if I'm reading it wrong. It just says regional council fencing projects. That's the way I'm reading. That's not owners fencing projects.
Steve's right. There's also Fonterra you got to consider too. They have regulations for Neil might be able to know more about that than I would, but they also brought in their own set of rules as well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I thought their rules, but
I thought you were going to make, I thought that at one of the previous meetings recently that we agreed or that you were going to meet with regional council to discuss this sort of stuff. Like being there as well and go out in the field and show them examples
No, you're right, John, that was right. Rachel and I had a meeting with the team up there, and as Johannes has said, that the people up there keep moving on all the time. So the agreement you have with the people on the ground today, you meet a new person tomorrow with a totally different idea. They come through Lawrence, they send a map of the land where they go. I have a look with the cocky and the fencer and make recommendations like we've changed. Regional Council's first plan was to have 4 metres either side for riparian planting, but they've worked that out now that it's not working. So what we've done is that we fence within 1 metre of the race on one side only, and that's the side we clean from. But what's crept in probably in the last 6 months, it's all about money. That's the problem, is that the Regional Council is subsidising it. They get a fencing contractor in to do the whole lot. As you know, the water race is like a dog's hind leg. Fencer comes to a corner and there's 3 posts to go in, so he puts one in, jumps across the gully, one on the other side, saves 2 posts. And then we've got a piece of land that we're 17 or 18 metres away from the race. So what I've had to do is cut the wires and put in posts ourselves and extend the wires back round so that we can go right round the edge. But it's getting to the stage now that that's starting to be quite a bigger cost on us. At the start of it was only 1 or 2 here and there. So it's turned a lot of my stuff now into being a policeman and watching where there's so many fencing contractors out there. And the quicker if they're on by the chain, the quicker they get it done, the more money they get. If they don't use all the materials, it seems to go home on the back of their ute, you know.
It's been an ongoing problem for a while, that you're taking longer to clean the races because the subdivisions didn't have gates along the races, so that was but we talked about that.
The subdivisions we pick up in the plans.
That was a bit of it, and then the other thing was Regional Council recommending planting and not taking into account cleaning of water races. So we were going to address those things in a code of practice.
Well,
We haven't got that done, but in this, because there's sort of more urgency on this, should we not be sending a letter to all water race ratepayers and make them aware of the fact that as a fencing, we have to have a requirement for the water race system is that you're able to clean efficiently. And if there are fences all over the place on the right side, you will be taxed extra. But I think you can do that because the same as if somebody wants the water race cleanings taken away from in front of their house, you can charge them. We must be able to do it. But I think you've got to make people aware. I just don't think people are aware of the difficulty until you rock up there and say to them, well, I can't clean this way because the trees planted so far out from it. I think the other thing is the height of the trees cleaning a race. It's just make it difficult.
Yeah, thanks, John. I think now is probably a timely time to actually create a newsletter and send it to the water race ratepayers, basically because we've got a new committee now, and just point out some of those fencing requirements that come, suit our operations basically, and if they don't, they will be charged extra. Another point, I'm just going to ask a question of Mikey, what sort of percentage do you think of people that are making it difficult for you to operate and clean?
Well, because of the Regional Council subsidy, everybody thinks that they can get their fencing done for half the price. We'll do it now.
Yeah.
So it's just skyrocketing.
So the percentage is
probably looking at the moment. I looked the other week, I worked out 20 Ks last week, just in 3 or 4 different farms. So when you start adding that up, they've only got 600 Ks once it's all fenced. It's going to make a huge difference to the way we operate.
We seem to build a regional council.
Yeah. So I'll just bring something in here. Communicating with the water race ratepayers. For the council to actually use their rating database and to identify the water race ratepayers so that communication can be got to them quickly. There's another point in there, and I think I believe we've gone on to restricted now at the intake. I mean, that should be communicated straight away to all the to all the users, ratepayers, whatever. And I think we need, is it a big job to develop that? It can't be really, to identify the water ratepayers, Jeff?
Shouldn't be there. I mean,
Because that could be,
we're billing them all.
yeah, so that could be a really quick way to get information out to them. You know, even if you have to send it 2 or 3 times for them to get it in here on some stuff, but I think especially that low flows, we all need to know that. Like the regional council, they very quickly tell us with our irrigation consents, you're on a low flow. So be aware, don't infringe, otherwise you can be fined. That's the rules. That's what our consent tells us. But I think, you know, I think it's time we were actually able to do that.
Or maybe council through its comms department, and if the water race users and ratepayers were encouraged to just check on it every so often, then it puts the onus on the.
Sorry, Dale, check on what?
On the website.
Check on the website, on
yeah.
council's website, to get the latest updates on that sort of thing, rather than us contact everybody. If the users and the water race operators.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but sometimes it's really important that people actually get that information smacked in front of them straight away, especially when we go into a low flow. Because there are some people out there who don't really play by the rules with that water that is for all of us. And so I've got Grant's my neighbour, and I see him doing silly things with the water. Well, still doing things with the water that he now can't do. You can pop over and say, hey, did you realise, or read your emails? But it can't be too much to do, surely.
Might have to put up the overhead allocations on.
I'll do that.
Did you have a comment?
No.
Yeah, I guess
Comment, don't.
what I'm not clear, and I'm looking at the Greater Wellington Regional Council website now, specifically with it deals with water races. And this is about as clear as mud to me, just reading right now. It talks and suggests of even 3 metre setbacks, depending on what your part of the water race is classified like in. So I don't understand what that means. But then it goes to another block and says fencing and planting advice and support. And I think this takes you to the Carterton Council website, but I'm not sure. I guess what I'd appreciate is paper that tells me what the situation is. What is regional council's requirement? Because once we know that, then we can bounce it against the issues, and then we'll have a drop down as to what we need to address with them. The suggestion that a water race should have a 3 metre setback for fencing.
But you can't clean.
Oh,
Can't clean.
that's ridiculous.
Practical.
But then there's another definition of a stream or a water race in another part of this website, where it says that only applies to streams over 1 metre wide. Well, a water race is not a stream, it's an artificial waterway, and it's not 1 metre wide, or is it?
In some places.
In some places, and it does say, it says,
It's not a metre wide.
and it does say depends on which part of the water race it may have a different classification. So it's about as clear as mud to me. So to understand the problem and how to fix it, I need to understand what the
It's really,
rules are.
it's really clear because Class A is cleaned annually, Class B is as and if required. So they're both clean. So the fencing is the problem.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what classification the race is.
For how far the fences are out is inhibiting your ability to do the job and is increasing the cost, then for me, I need to know whether or not those fences are in the right place and who's going to pay because they're not. Or
We had a water race workshop and discussed all this stuff. And what we came to was that our recommendation was that you could plant so wide, but on the off side of cleaning. So it still enabled Pikey to clean on site. So the planting had to be on the off side where he didn't clean.
So even if there was something for a starting point, even if there's something on the website that says thinking of fencing your water races, talk to us first. You know.
So I think a newsletter, but a newsletter, I think that's a good idea.
Comms is.
Send it out to them and say if your plantings, but if your fencing is not in keeping with recommendations of Carterton District Council, then you will be charged extra for cleaning the appropriate cost, whatever it is.
How you do with that? I just want to know
Is it a thing from this water race committee or the council that water races have to be fenced? Or is it just the regional council that's saying waterways have to,
Yeah.
fence, and the water race has got nothing to do with him. That's the way I see it. The water race belongs to the council and the landowners. And for me, to the regional council to say, you've got to fence it, to me is bullshit.
Well, advice to, sorry, Mr. Chair, we provide advice, this is regional council, to help when planting, fencing, water races and other waterways, including the most appropriate species of plant, how to manage pest plants. You may also be eligible for support. Well, there's a carrot dangling. Email us.
But they don't say we have to do it.
No, it doesn't say so they have to, but if someone's got, if a lifestyle, and I think a lifestyle want to be all nice and environmentally friendly, they've said that and see free money, of course they're going to put a fence in. But without talking to you, the council, it's Carterton Council. So
I think
correct problems.
Jeff's got a comment that I suggested.
John Booth makes a really good point, and I've just taken an action, and I want to, Robin can make sure I remember my action. It's just to identify the total number of water race users, the number that we have phone numbers for, and the number of water race, the total number of water race owners, the number of owners we have phone numbers for, so we could text message, and the number of owners that we have email for, so that we could email. Because I know in our rating database, we only have about 30% of the population who we can contact electronically. Everybody else is by snail mail. And so I think if we want to improve our comms around these sorts of things happening on low flow, engagement around fencing and that kind of thing, we need to drive up the number of water race owners who we have electronic communication means with. Preferably email, but maybe by phone. So I'll go away, I'll take an action to find out what that is, and then perhaps I could bring back to the committee, and the committee can help us boost that number back so that when we do comms, they are actually effective.
The last printout I got was 380, but people like the Talek family own first.
You've probably got all of their phone numbers.
I know there was 491 people we emailed about the elections. Sorry.
No, 400.
They were letter and email. They got both, so it didn't matter if they didn't have the email.
491, but the question is how many have we got via email and how many have we got from?
So it's a matter of getting all that
I'll find
information together.
what information we've got, and then I'll check it against Pikey's master list.
Yeah.
And
Mr. Chairman, is that John's right, but we do have a lot of absentee owners that actually live in Wellington. The rates and newsletters will go to them, not to the people that are managing or leasing their farm.
Yeah.
Then it's up to them to inform their lease or leasee or whatever. So.
Legislation. Yeah. Like he's on the land all the time anyway, so he could have a swag of the newsletters or whatever.
Might have to get up at 3 in the morning instead of 5, Pikey.
Harness.
I won't go to bed.
Just for clarification, Grant, under the National Resources Plan, it's a requirement for all waterways to be fenced.
Yeah.
So that's not a Greater Wellington decision, and it's not a Carterton decision. Yeah, but it's national legislation. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
sorry, in my language, that's bullshit, because if you feed both sides of the water race, how does the stock get the bloody water?
Yeah.
Have them.
Eh?
Yeah. Stock have still got to have access to them.
You can fence the wire above the water so that cattle can get access.
Definition of way.
Okay, any more discussion on Jeet's report here? I think we've done questions and discussion quite well. We've got some actions that Jeff's going to take away. So can I have a mover and a seconder for Jeet's report? That's Steve Cretney. Seconded John Booth. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. Thank you. So next, 6.4, the quarterly report. I think that's Lawrence. That's Jeet too. So Jeet, go on.
We have had a few spikes of E. coli here and there, but that's due to the reasons I've stated in the report. That's especially in winter, be the overland flows from the stock of wild animals, fecal matters from them, or it could be due to the heavy rainfall because as a lot of silt was deposited and the E. coli could be resuspended from those. So except for E. coli, all other parameters.
I see that normally in the E. coli, what we've noticed over the years with these graphs,
Sorry.
what we've noticed over the years is the E. coli levels, all the levels drop when we've got sufficient water in the water race. But the E. coli levels that tend to go up a bit right when you got not much water in the water race.
If there's,
But I see this one is sort of out of character. But I wondered if the like the animals, the way place farms are properties a farm doesn't change a lot. But like E. coli, like it effectively comes from feces, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So, and that includes, of course, birds, as you pointed out.
yes,
So I wonder if there's a bigger population of ducks and like pukakers and stuff.
Yeah.
Around those water races, and they're on them all the time.
yeah, could be that. Could be also dead wild animals, because we cannot locate the exact source of these fecal matters or the decomposition of dead animals, but could be from anywhere.
I think just to the comments of the higher E. coli levels in lower flows, it's about a bit of both depending on the scenario. So research which suggests that you see higher concentrations of E. coli and nitrates in wet weather because of the impact of overland flow. Likewise, at the same time, high flows result in dilution, which is positive. On a negative side is the opposite of dilution. You get concentration in low flows, which sees a spike again. So it is really up and down depending on the situation.
And also to note, the spike is not everywhere. It's in certain races, not all races.
And the other comment I had was and it mentioned somewhere, and getting some idea of the effect of runoff on the roads.
Yeah.
And so forth, because a lot of the roads runoff, they just point it down to whatever stream town, there was a water race, they point it over there. Have we sort of monitoring that somewhere along the main areas that are where it's obvious a lot of stuff is coming off the roads?
We are monitoring what's stormwater runoff. But that's a different.
Yeah, that's already.
Yep. Yeah.
And I'll just comment on, you were looking at the costs of the compliance in terms of the resource consent.
Yeah.
And once you start looking at road runoff with your hydrocarbons and that would go up quite significantly compared to what the costs are at the moment.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, just got one recommendation which we'll move to, that we receive the report. Can I have a move by the seconder, please? John Booth. And I will second it. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Right. We're done. Yeah, it's still on the agenda, so we'll just close with our Karakia Timatanga, which is up there on the left. Kia whaka.
Aere te tapu, te wāhia, nara, te ruruki, whakaha ai, te ruruki, whakaha ai,
So thank you all for attending, and I will declare this meeting closed. Thank you.